Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hey, do you realize that good grief, it's just a tiny bit over a week until Christmas. Got your shopping done? Hey, if you don't, take advantage of our fantastic December 2021, all the month of January 2021. On all orders of $25 or more, you get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That's fantastic, folks. So take advantage of that. There'll be a banner up top very, very shortly if it's not already there. So, again, take advantage of that. It'll save you some really, really good money. Okay. We've been focused on the return of the absent master, Matthew 25:14 and following. We have segued from that to the idea of Acts chapter 1, he shall come in like manner. What I've been sharing with you is that this concept of the return of the absent master, all of the New Testament references to the second coming are about the return of the absent master. And we are told that's the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Well, that's correct. No doubt about it. But I want to share with you, first of all, the Old Testament source of what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, 29 to 31, that definitively places the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, which is Daniel chapter 7, 13 and 14, not at his ascension, not at an end of time, but rather at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Now, boy, how to keep this short. This particular study is one of those that you can just keep going, and I could add another 30 or 40 videos here, but as I prepared to do this morning, I kept thinking, okay, how do I keep this short? So I'm going to do my very best. Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, that's the Son of Man, when he would come on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. They will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, I want to tell you, I think it was John A.T. Robinson who said, what we have here is just a pistache of Old Testament echoes. And what he meant by that is that there's so many Old Testament prophecies, so many Old Testament passages that are echoed. They're conflated here, all in one text, same as in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Okay, what I want to focus on, again for time consideration, is the language, he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. Now, first of all, let me make the observation, as I have many times already, many in the amillennial and the postmillennial world agree and admit that Matthew 24, 29 to 31 is talking about the Lord's coming in judgment in AD 70. Then, paradoxically and strangely enough, they turn right around and they go to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, which I'll develop next week, in which you have the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds with the angels, with the sound of a trumpet, to gather the elect, and they say, see, that is the real coming of the Lord. Now, this is a great time to suggest you go to my website and you order, along with some other material to get the good discount, my book, AD 70, A Shadow of the Real End. And the reason I suggest that is because men such as Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, and others, they say, well, yeah, the Lord in Matthew 24, 29 to 31, is talking about his coming on the clouds, power and great glory, with the angels, sound of a trumpet, to gather the elect. Yeah, that's AD 70. But it's typological, a foreshadowing of the real coming of the Lord on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, with the angels, with the sound of a trumpet, etc., to gather the elect. So Matthew chapter 24 is supposedly typological. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is supposedly the real thing. But again, more on that later. But here's what I want to share with you. And I suppose I should introduce this by saying, in the ancient commentaries, what I'm about to share with you, was extremely widely recognized. And in modern critical commentaries, such as G.K. Beale, so in the New Testament use of the Old Testament, acknowledges that in Matthew chapter 24, 31, when Jesus spoke about the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, with the great sound of a trumpet, that he was drawing directly from Isaiah 27:13. Now, as a little bit more introductory material, I want you to know, as I was growing up, I never gave a hint of, I never gave a thought, not one thought, to the idea that Matthew chapter 24, 29 to 31 was predictive of the resurrection. That concept was not on my screen. As I grew older and began to investigate, however, and I realized that Isaiah 24 through 27, what is commonly called the Little Apocalypse, a united prophetic discourse. Let me repeat that. A united prophetic discourse. The entire discourse is joined together by that little term, in that day. So let me make this ever so brief observation. Isaiah chapter 25 predicted the resurrection. Isaiah 25 verse 8. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 54 and following, said the resurrection would be when death would be destroyed, quoting verbatim from Isaiah 25:8. So I know Isaiah 25 verse 8 foretold the resurrection. Okay? What is overlooked by 99.9% of all commentators is that Isaiah 25, 1 to 3, puts that event, the resurrection, and the Messianic banquet, at the time of the destruction of the city and the temple. It's emphatic, ladies and gentlemen. So you have the destruction of the city and the temple at the time when the Messianic banquet would be established, the time when death would be destroyed. Hello? So that's chapter 25. In chapter 26, pardon me, verse 19, your dead shall live, together with my dead body they shall rise. Awake and sing, those of you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is like the dew of herbs, and the earth shall cast out the dead. Resurrection. Oh, when would that be? Well, in verse 21, it would be at the coming of the Lord out of the heavens, when the earth would disclose its blood. In other words, the time of the vindication of the martyrs. So you have the resurrection at the coming of the Lord, at the time of the vindication of the martyrs. When did Jesus say all of the blood of all the righteous martyrs shed on the earth would be vindicated? Oh, in his generation. Matthew 23, 29 to 37. So just like chapter 25, 1 to 8, you have resurrection in the context of the judgment and destruction of the city and the temple. In chapter 26, you have the resurrection at the coming of the Lord to vindicate the martyrs which Jesus put in AD 70. Now, in chapter 27, we come to chapter 27. We'll start with verse 9, just for time's sake. By this, the iniquity of Jacob will be covered, This is all the fruit of the taking away his sin. When? Now I want to stop right here and make the observation that Paul in Romans 11, 25 to 27, was anticipating the time of the taking away of Israel's sin at the coming of the Lord. And he quotes from Isaiah 27, verse 9. By the way, once again, scholars agree on this. G.K. Beale, Earl Ellis, in his use of the Old Testament in the New, and a host of critical commentaries, it is admitted, acknowledged, and known and taught Paul in Romans 11 was anticipating the fulfillment of Isaiah 27, the taking away of Israel's sin. Okay? Read this with me together. By this, the iniquity of Jacob will be covered. This is all the fruit of taking away his sin. Now watch. When? When would Israel's sin be taken away? Well, some commentators try to avoid this and say, oh, well, it was Israel's sin was taken away at the cross. No, it wasn't. Paul said it would be at the coming of the Lord out of Zion. That wasn't the cross. Furthermore, just the terminology of the coming of the Lord out of Zion is, in the great majority of its usages, a judgment statement. But I have to hurry here. When? So Israel's sin would be taken away. When? When he makes all the stones of the altar like chalk stones that are beaten to dust. Wooden images and incense altars shall not stand. The fortified city will be desolate, the habitation forsaken, left like a wilderness. There the calf will feed, there it will lie down, consume its branches. When its boughs are withered, they will be broken off. The women come and set them on fire. For, here's the reason for all of this. Here's the reason for the destruction of the temple, altar, and the city. For it is a people of no understanding. Therefore, the one who made them will no longer have mercy on them. Folks, this is taken directly from Deuteronomy 32:18 about the fate of Israel. Not the fate of the world, the fate of Israel in her last days. The one who formed them will show them no favor. Now watch. It shall come to pass in that day. What day? The day of the taking away of Israel's sin. The day of the destruction of the altar. The day of the destruction of the city because of Israel's sin. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord will thresh from the channel of the river to the brook of Egypt, and you shall be gathered one by one, O you children of Israel. So it shall be in that day the great trumpet will be blown. They will come who are about to perish in the land of Assyria, and they who are outcast in the land of Egypt, and shall worship the Lord in the holy mount of Jerusalem. In other words, here we have the resurrection, the time of the kingdom, the time of salvation, the time of the taking away of sin, at the time of the sounding of the great trumpet. Now, as I mentioned a moment ago, scholars, both rabbinic, historical, critical, and even popular, admit that Jesus in Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, was citing Isaiah 27. Okay, so Isaiah 27:13 was predicting the resurrection of Israel under Messiah at the time of the salvation of the remnant. Isaiah 27:13 was predicting the resurrection at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. Jesus, in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 31, in his prediction of his coming in the judgment of Jerusalem and the temple, quoted Isaiah 27:13. Now watch this. We are told that Matthew 25:14 and following, and surely Matthew chapter 25:31 and following, is the time of the resurrection at the sounding of the great trumpet. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 15:51 and 52. The resurrection would occur at the last trumpet. So, The time of the resurrection is sounding of the great trumpet. Amen. But Matthew 24:31 is the sounding of the great trumpet at the time of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. That means the Olivet Discourse is not divided. That means that Matthew chapter 25:14 and following, Matthew 25:13 and following are talking about the Lord's coming in AD 70. And ladies and gentlemen, there was no resurrection in AD 70 that typified a yet future resurrection. It was one resurrection in the last days at the sounding of the last trumpet. And a final thought. John in Revelation talked about the sounding of the seven trumpets. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh is the last trumpet. You know, the time of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15. And in Revelation chapter 11, 15 and following, that seventh last trumpet would be blown at the time of the resurrection. When would that be? It would be the time of the judgment of the city where the Lord was crucified. You see the harmony? You see the beauty? And again, that means that the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven in power and great glory of Matthew chapter 24, 30 and 31 is in fact a prediction of the Lord's coming at the time of the resurrection. And keep in mind, amillennialists and postmillennialists alike admit Matthew 24, 29 to 31 was fulfilled in AD 70. That is a tacit, unwitting, but a tacit admission that the resurrection of the dead was in AD 70, and the Olivet Discourse is not divided. Thanks so much for joining me on this morning's Morning Musings. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Please be safe. Don't forget to take advantage of our fantastic special discounts for the rest of December and all of January. I do appreciate it. Remember, I'll only be with you for a couple of days next week because it's Christmas week. Got family coming in to enjoy the holidays. In the meantime, thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next week.